You are ready to go, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and call this special Planning and Zoning Board meeting of Wednesday, September 23rd to order. Before I ask for an approval of the agenda, I want to extend my gratitude to the members of the Planning and Zoning for volunteering to do this special meeting to help the applicant meet the timeline that they are looking to meet. I know that it's a Wednesday night. I know that you guys didn't sign up to do a lot of special meetings. So on behalf of the Newberry City Commission, we just want you to know how much we appreciate you. And with that, I'd like to ask for an approval of the agenda as it has been published.
Motion to approve as published.
Second.
To approve from Naeem, a second from Jessica. Are there any questions or changes about the agenda from the board members? Okay. Dallas, if you could please put our phone number up for the public. Brian, do you have it? Can you give me a head nod that you're working on it, or I'm not even sure that you're hearing me. Oh, okay. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have called our special planning and zoning meeting to order. We have a motion properly seconded on the floor to approve the agenda. If you have a question about the agenda, a comment about the agenda that you'd like to address to the board, not about the subject on the agenda, but just about the agenda itself, now is the appropriate time to do so. You can do that by dialing the phone number that you see on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, just press that little hand symbol at the bottom of your screen, and that will let us know that you have a comment that you'd like to make to the board. If you are calling in, all you need to do is press 9 to raise your hand and then 6 to unmute once you have been let into the meeting and have been addressed. Again, board members and the public, we've got about a 30-second delay between our feed and the YouTube feed. So when it's necessary to go to public comment before we take a vote, we will make sure that we kill a little bit of time just to make sure that folks have the opportunity to call in and be heard. And by my clock, it's been about 40 seconds since we have put the phone number up. So Brian, do we have any members of the public with their hand raised? Brian, I think you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, missed that part. Yeah, no, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll go back to the board then for a roll call vote. Chair Baker?
Aye.
Gavin?
Aye.
Miss Linda?
Aye.
Bill? Give me a thumbs up, Bill, if your audio is went out. I think you froze. Let's go to Naeem and we'll come back to Bill.
Aye.
Bill, can you hear us now? I'm reading his lips and he's saying aye, but it looks like he's also saying something else. Bill, can you unmute yourself? Okay, we're going to move on with a 4-0 vote with Bill having technical issues, but our motion is approved by. Oh, he's gone. Our motion is approved, so the agenda passes. And if we would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I have a flag here. You can look at mine if you don't have one handy for yourself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
States of America.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, to the board, I'm assuming on the agenda is public announcements, but let's just quickly go through the board to make sure the board members don't have any announcements. Chair Baker, do you have any announcements? Gavin? Bill? He's still connecting to audio. Naeem, do you have any announcements?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Bill, can you hear us?
I'm back and I can hear you. I rejoined the meeting.
Wonderful. We're at announcements. Do you have any announcements you want to give to the board members?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, then we'll move right on to old business. We have one item On tonight's agenda, it's a public hearing regarding the application for a special temporary use permit for a Sister Hazel concert at the Mime on October 23rd, 2020. Brian, are you going to lead this presentation? Wait, we're in quasi judicial. I'm sorry. Hang on one second. So we only have one quasi judicial tonight, so we're only going to go through this one time. In a minute, I'm going to ask the attorney if he would read into the record the ordinance resolution by title and number, and then I'm going to explain the rules of quasi judicial. Now, when the planning and zoning moves from being a legislative advisory board to quasi judicial, they move into being a judicial board. So they can only take substantial and competent evidence. I'm going to quote from the evidence. It says, all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and ask Rich if you would read the resolution into the record for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolution 2020-46, which is STUP application 20-03, an application for a special permit for a temporary use to allow a one-time outdoor concert as provided in section 14.10.1, temporary use permits issued by City Commission of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, to be held October 23rd, 2020, on property approximately 216 acres in size, located near the Alachua County, Gilchrist County line and the southeast corner of West Newberry Road, say Route 26 and Southwest 298th Street, Gilchrist County, 2085 Southeast 90th Avenue.
Thank you, Rich. We have special procedures when we sit in quasi judicial, and I'm going to explain those procedures in 1 second. Before we do that, I'm going to ask Janine to swear in anyone who wants to give testimony. And I see we have Mr. Benito and Lieutenant Jason Levy on the line. So Janine, do you want Rich to swear them in? Okay, Rich, would you? And Lieutenant Levy and Mr. Benito, if you would just raise your right hand and unmute yourself. And Brian is going to do it as well. And Rich is going to give you the oath, and then just state your name and say that you will or you won't. Rich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you hereby solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Jason Levy, yes, I do.
Brian Thomas, yes, I do.
All right. You are all duly sworn.
Thank you. And Mr. Benito, could you say your name along with that? You do?
Phil Benito, yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, I'd like to also ask for any ex parte of the board members. Chair Baker, do you have any ex parte communications you'd like to disclose at this time?
I have no ex parte communications.
Thank you. Gavin?
I have none.
Bill?
No.
Naeem?
No, sir.
Miss Linda?
No.
Thank you. When we sit in ex parte, we're going to hear from the staff first, who's going to give a short overview. Then the applicant can make a presentation with no time limit. Then the staff will give their report and recommendation, also with no time limit. I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim third-party intervener status. So that's going to move us to public comment. Any member of the public will have 3 minutes to address the board on this item, at which point then the applicant will have the opportunity to cross-examine. Then the staff will have the opportunity to cross-examine. Then the members of the decision-making body, through the chair, may ask questions of the staff, applicant, or any of the participants. And then we're going to hear final arguments from the applicant and the staff. At that point, the city attorney is going to advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. Once that is done, the board will enter into deliberations, and after deliberations, a vote will be taken to approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application. That's the procedure that we're going to adhere to fairly strictly tonight. And with that, I'd like to ask staff to give their short overview to the board. Is Brian, you going to be doing this, or is Wendy? I saw it. There's Wendy.
Yes, sir.
It's here.
I will be giving the overview and the staff presentation.
And Brian, if you could speak into your microphone or turn your mic up, you're a little bit soft.
There is something weird going on with this microphone because everybody says it's too quiet. Let me make one quick adjustment.
Just speak up as well you can. We can hear you. It's just a little bit of a strain.
Is that any better?
That's much better.
Okay. Is it too much better?
No, I think it's right.
There we go. Okay, so. This is a special permit for temporary use to allow outdoor use. In this case, it's a drive-in concert by the local band Sister Hazel. It's a typo up there. It's STUP 20-01 or 03, not 01. It is an application by Mr. Phil Benita, who is the promoter for the band and is acting as agent for the property owner, Pat Post. Stated it's a special permit to allow for temporary use, be a one-time concert event. It will be an outdoor concert in an agricultural zoning district. As well, it'll be a drive-in format for an outdoor concert. It's on the single parcel, but it's within 3 contiguous parcels that total 260 approximately acres. Only 9 of which will be used for the concert event. It's at the near the Gilchrist County, Alachua County line on State Road 26. And while the site includes the large phosphate mining pit that is being called the mine, this particular concert, because it is going to be drive-in format, will not be down in the mine area. Rather, it'll be on about 9 acres above on level ground. As most of you are familiar with by now, because we've had a number of special temporary use permits applied for concerts on this site. This is the general area and parcel. This particular instance, the red square represents the approximate area where the concert will take place. The stage will be placed on the south, facing north, and parking will occur facing north to south to the stage. Approximately 500 vehicles. There are 4 persons per vehicle ticket, with an option to buy 2 extras if you have a larger vehicle for a total of 6. So at least there is a potential for anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 total participants. Mr. Benito has expressed that he thinks it's probably closer to the 2,000 number. Again, it's a one-time concert. It'll be Friday, October 23rd. Doors open for parking at 6 p.m. The music will be completed. The concert will be completed by 10:30 p.m. with no musical activity after that. We will allow a setup period 2 days prior and cleanup period 2 days after. So they'd be done by Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. I missed another. As you know, we cut and paste a lot of our presentations and work from previous similar works. And the concerts we conducted down in the mining pit is incorrect. It will be above the mining pit. Anticipated attendance, like I said, is somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. And as you're aware from previous applications, the overall site capacity is approximately 25,000 or greater. There will be food and beverage vendors. There will be no alcohol sales on site. There will be t-shirt and concert memorabilia sales, no overnight camping, and no open fires allowed. And that pretty much, it will include, of course, the site plan, operations, emergency plan, facility placement, location plan. That pretty much covers the staff overview. If Mr. Benito would like to chime in at this point, if he has anything to add, or we can finish up with the rest of the staff.
Mr. Benito, you've got the floor. You have no time limit, and you're welcome to add to anything that Brian has said. I don't know if you brought a PowerPoint or if you just have it in your head, but it's your opportunity to address the board.
I do not have a PowerPoint set up at this point, but I think Brian covered pretty much everything. Does anyone have any specific questions regarding the kind of preliminary overview of it?
We'll get to questions a little bit later in the quasi judicial procedures. So if you don't have anything, I'm just going to send it back to Brian to see if he's got anything additional or if he's ready to give staff's recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Muriel. There are additional items. Again, given the nature, we were finalizing part of the presentation right up to the last minute. As you know, in our land development regulations, outdoor concerts are allowed by special temporary use permit approved by the commission in agricultural districts. You have to come up with specific items addressed in the findings, which we'll get to in just a moment. And the standard of evidence for a temporary use permit versus a special exception is a lesser standard. Consideration for the temporary use permits, noise hazards, traffic, parking, specific time period requirements, which are addressed, appropriate conditions and safeguards. And then standards of evidence, again, the special temporary use permit is generally going to be lower. Standard of evidence is acceptable because it's for a one-time event. You're not granting any rights that are going to be allowable beyond that event. Whereas a special exception is going to be a higher standard of evidence because you're granting more permanent rights. And so draft findings, and these would be based on the final, could be amended based on the discussion tonight by the Planning and Zoning Board. As far as noise, nuisance, or hazard, the draft response would be the Planning and Zoning Board, or finding would be the Planning and Zoning Board has found that the applicant's testimony will comply with the city's noise ordinance, noting the small scale of the event will allow for the use of less volume that would be typical at a larger event. Again, there's a limit of 500 cars. It's a much smaller venue than you would normally have at a concert. Excessive vehicular traffic, again, limited to 500 cars, which there's adequate area for cars to get off the road quickly and to stack. The applicant is going to work with the Pulaski County Sheriff's Office on a final traffic plan. So the finding would be that the Planning and Zoning Board has found that the current transportation conditions would be maintained based on those governing the temporary use for a single concert event. The requirement of compliance with all stipulations. Ingress uses one incoming traffic lane with the property that are designed to keep traffic off State Road 26. And all the traffic coming will be off of the state highways and then back onto the state highway. And parking. The finding would be that the Planning and Zoning Board has found that the location of facilities in designated parking areas for the 216-acre property would be adequate to address this finding. Again, they're only going to use a total of about 9 out of that 216 acres. So there's not only is there adequate room for parking, but there's adequate room for parking with social distancing. The plan is basically that they're going to be, each car is effectively taking up 3 car spaces so that they can be separated, and then family groups or groups that come together can set up chairs outside their vehicles if they want to, and still maintain well over 6 feet from the adjacent vehicles. Time period, as we addressed, the concert will start at 6 p.m. open doors. The concert itself won't start at 6. That's when the doors will open, and then the concert will be complete by no later than 10:30. They actually think it's 10, but they added a little 30-minute cushion just in case things run a little bit late. Appropriate safeguards. The finding would be that if approved, limitations and requirements for temporary use been required as permit conditions to address safety and operations, emergency management, noise, traffic, and other safeguards. And then the conditions, again, it's a temporary use permit for single use outdoor concert held on October 23rd from 6 to 10:30 p.m., including time for setup and cleanup. Primary entrance will be off Newberry Road. Permitted uses for the concert are as follows. One-time event, they'll have a concert, and then they'll also have food and beverage vendors, sale of t-shirt and concert memorabilia. Outside vendors, and by that what this means is those not directly employed by the band itself, if any, would have to have a current business tax receipt, which is what we require of all of these types of venues. That would not apply to the band itself. If the band was selling their own memorabilia and whatnot, wouldn't have to have the business tax. Again, it would go from 6 to 10:30. Setup can occur from 2 days prior to 2 days after, cleanup 2 days after. No musical activity after 10:30. We've stated it would be held where it would be held at be mined, but up on flat ground instead of down in the hole. No overnight camping will be permitted for the event, and you can make it in here, but no open flames either. All uses located consistent with the attached parking plan, which is shown in the packet, and I've got a picture of that here as well. I'll pull that up when this is over. Applicant will maintain an up-to-date operations emergency plan. It's basically the same emergency plan that was approved before, with some minor modifications for the scaling down for size, which is in consultation with the fire chief, Ben Buckner. He approved that to staff at the staff level. And then as outlined in the current operations plan, no fires permitted, as discussed. Stages would need to be inspected prior to use by the fire chief and the building inspector or the building official. If the concert, which they haven't asked to do this, but if they decided they wanted to use some sort of the big assembly style tents, then those would require a building permit and inspection by the fire chief, the building official and building inspector. The evacuation plan provided at least 15 minutes prior to the event site being occupied. Again, that's basically the same plan as before, but modified for the scale. Event security be implemented and coordinated with the Letcher County Sheriff's Office, which we have Officer Levy here with us tonight. The roadway access. The interior roadways have to maintain a 20-foot wide clear width to allow it for emergency vehicle access at all times, with a 13.5-foot vertical clearance. They have to be surfaces capable of carrying the live load of the fire apparatus, which there's been quite a bit of compacted lime rock put out there to make the travel lanes accessible. And then proof of liability insurance, which they've offered. Let's see. They will provide restrooms. The applicant might be able to better address how they're going to handle that, but it will be portable porta potty type restrooms. All of the rental porta potty companies are now offering additional sanitation due to COVID. Same with the food vendors that are going to be there. Again, they'll be responsible for coordinating with outside vendors, and actually, of course, we would help with that. They only have a small number of anticipating a couple of food vendors, maybe and a couple of other type vendors, getting their mobile vendor license if they don't already have one. And we discussed before, no alcoholic beverages to be sold on premises. They'll limit attendance to the adequacy of facilities. Obviously, this facility has substantially larger capacity available, but also they're going to provide parking adequate to meet the needs for social distancing for COVID. And again, all stages at the facility have to be inspected for Florida Fire Prevention Code and Florida Building Code. And last, the temporary structures in excess of 120 feet Florida building code. They're not anticipated at this time, but if for some reason they decided they needed to erect one as a temporary structure, it would have to comply with Florida building code. And so if you remember that red, there we go, that red square right there, if you'll keep that in mind, and let me reshare a new screen. So this, if you imagine this superimposed on the red square there, you get an idea of how the parking layout's going to come off. It's not to scale. There's a longer driveway in to get cars off the road, off of State Road 26. But they'll basically be directed in. I believe Mr. Benito had said that their parking attendants will park the larger, taller vehicles in the back with the more regular sized vehicles in the front, and I guess maybe on the sides as well to prevent blocking the view from those in front of them. But this is basically the plan. So you'll have a alleyway in the center. You'll have access on the sides. This is the area for food vendors and merchandise vendors, and then the portable bathrooms on the left, on the west side. Stage at the south facing north. And that, back to.
Up.
And so with that, staff's recommendation is recommend approval of the City Commission of STUP 20-03, Resolution 2020-46, with the amendments as presented by staff, contingent upon compliance with recommended findings and conditions.
All right, thank you, Brian. We have no third-party intervener, so that's going to move us to public comment. Brian, if you could put our phone number up.
Just not as quick at this as Dallas is.
All right. We'll get there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are through the presentations for tonight's sole agenda item. We've come to public comment. Now would be your opportunity to address the Planning and Zoning Board about your thoughts and feelings on this application for a special temporary use permit for a Sister Hazel drive-in concert at the Mine on October 23rd in the year of our Lord 2020. If you'd like to call and address the board, all you need to do is dial that phone number that's on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. That'll let us know that you'd like to click that hand symbol. That'll let us know that you'd like to address the board. Once we have you in the meeting, we'll make sure that you have the opportunity to do so. Again, we've got about a 30-second delay between our feed and the YouTube feed, which should be expiring about now. Brian, do we have anyone with their hand raised?
No, Mr. Mayor, we do not.
Okay. Well, we will slowly make our way back to the dais and give our applicant the opportunity to cross-examine. Mr. Benedito, did you hear anything out of staff's presentation or their recommendation that you would like to question, or were you comfortable with that presentation?
Brian covered that very well.
Awesome. We appreciate you, sir. Okay, staff, I'm assuming you don't want to cross-examine yourself, and that's going to move us to members of the decision-making body. Do you, P&Z members, do you have any questions that you would like to ask of the applicant or of staff? I know that we did not have this backup material in front of us last time, so we didn't really have any particulars to question. A lot of the backup material now we've discussed in depth about this site in previous meetings. But if you heard anything tonight that you'd like to clarify, go ahead. Gavin, was that a hand or no?
I might, but I'd rather the other board members go first.
Okay. Okay, Chair Baker, go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some questions that are probably for staff. They might be for Mr. Benito. I don't know. Why was this particular section of the property chosen? I know when we had reviewed previous special use permits, parking had been in a different spot. So I'm just curious as to why that spot was chosen for this concert.
This is Phil. After kind of visiting property, that seemed to be the kind of flattest, most consistent grade with minimal low spots or water retaining areas. And I felt like it's going to be the easiest way to make sure clearance height wise without having to trim too many trees to get the stage and have emergency vehicle access directly to the performance site.
So with a follow-up to that, is there a concern that since it's closer to Newberry Road, that there will be some traffic issues with getting the cars, like will they line up before 6 to try to get in at 6? Will there be space between to make sure that cars can get off of State Road 26 so that it's not impacted by, I mean, prior to the concert for a long period of time?
There is a lot of space. Lieutenant Levy actually was on site on Monday morning to kind of assess it himself, and I think might be able to answer a little bit better specifically as far as where we would stack the vehicles.
I agree. Lieutenant Levy, would you take that question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Chair, when we went out there Monday, the property owner, Mr. Post, actually put in a second roadway. A main roadway coming in has now been added, and there's also the original roadway onto the property that runs south from Newberry Road. We looked at it, measured it, and for the most part, we can fit just over if they had 500 cars, we can fit about 100 to 125 cars just in that one little entrance roadway itself to stage cars on the property. There's also another way they can go around on the north side of the property going east and circle around to where they park. And we can almost get more than half the cars if they were there at the same time to keep State Road 26 clear. We don't anticipate all those cars coming at the same time, but if we had an influx of traffic, it would be very easy to clear out and dump out the roadway itself to keep it open.
Does that answer your question, Chair Baker?
It does. I'm looking for my other questions, so go ahead and go on to somebody else.
And in my mind, as I was thinking about this after our last meeting, what we're considering here is, I'm not sure the percentage but when I compare it to the Watermelon Festival, this is a fraction of what comes into the Watermelon Festival. So that made me a whole lot more comfortable of thinking about this. With that driveway that they have and our ability to get people off the road for the Watermelon Festival in a timely manner. And I think with that long driveway, this is certainly a situation prepared for that eventuality. Other questions from board members?
On page 10 of the packet, and this is for staff, number 8 on the list of supplemental information, it's regarding the driveway permit. I thought during the last application that we went through for this property that there was a special or a temporary permit required from DOT. Is that not a requirement for the site anymore?
Brian?
To my knowledge, for an event this size, there wouldn't be. They've already done the improvements that were allowed under the temporary permit, though. And so, to the extent that the temporary permit's in effect and the improvements to the driveway ingress and egress have been made,
Okay.
would be the same.
And then this is a question for the attorney, and I don't know how much this impacts the city, but number 11 on the same page is the liability insurance. Are we requiring $1 million? Is that just what they're offering, or should the city ask for more?
I think $1 million would be fairly typical for something like this. And I was going to ask Mr. Benito if he could see to it that as part of the insurance, that the city actually be added as an additional insured. Our understanding is typically that is a very nominal cost, if any. So we would just request that be made part of the conditions. The city attorney would recommend that to the board tonight and on anything they consider.
Mr. Benito, do you have any thoughts to that point before we ask any further questions? Would you be willing to add the city on to that? Did we lose you, Mr. Benito? Yeah, well, as we work to get Phil back, let's move on and then we'll come back to that question. I agree with Rich. We've done that in the past. I think one time I got a report that there was no cost to it. Another time, I think it was 150, 200 bucks, something like that to add us. So it ended up not being that big of a deal because I know there was some questions about whether that was putting too much burden on the applicant, and it turned out not to be too big of a deal. Other questions of the board members? Gavin, were you done? I didn't mean to take.
That was all I had.
Okay. Okay. If there are no other questions from the board members,
I have a question.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for Brian and another one for Lieutenant Levy. For Brian, why is the city of Newberry the applicant on this permit rather than the property owner or the event promoter?
There may be a typo somewhere, but the applicant is Mr. Benito as agent for the owner. So Pat Post. It may be.
Okay, well, I think it was like page 1 of the packet. The application that listed the applicant as the city of Newberry.
Member Conrad, I'm looking at page 7. If you get that deep into it or scroll down, it does say name of applicant, Pat Post.
But then it says name of applicant's agent is the city of Newberry. Is that a typo? Should that be Phil?
Yeah, I guess that's what I saw.
Okay, yeah.
I read the top of it, but should we change that to Phil Benito? Brian?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, yes, sir. I was just looking for it.
I think we took this from West Fest, I'm guessing.
No, this is a new application Pat signed. It's on the actual application, Brian.
Yeah, I found it. We'll amend that. Yes.
All right, Bill, go ahead. You still have the floor. You got a question for Lieutenant Levy. I think we may have lost Bill. Bill, if you're still there, if you turn your video completely off, sometimes that helps the audio come through better. While we're waiting for him to get back on, do any other board members have any questions?
One other item that just caught my attention is page 21, and I know that someone just said it's a new application, but it looks like the operation and emergency plan was just a copy and paste operation and emergency plan for West Fest. It looks like how it's labeled at the top of the page, and looks like it was received in 2019. So for whatever that's worth, if it matters, if it doesn't matter, I don't know if the language in there addresses this specific event or if it addresses a previous event. But
my memory of that was pretty comprehensive. And most of those measures would be necessary for any event because they address things like an ambulance's ability to get down in the mine, having security on site, those kinds of things. And I understand that staff has worked with the applicant pretty hard to piece this together tonight. So I understand we have a lot of copy and paste in here, and so we're coming across some mistakes that we will weed out and get fixed before we go in front of the commission if that moves forward. Brian, we just need to change the date on that, or is there?
Well, actually, Mr. Winter, that was after consultation with Fire Chief Buckner. He said that essentially that emergency operations plan should be the same operations plan for any event that occurs on that property. For the reasons that you just mentioned, that it's comprehensive and it covers, regardless of what type of event it is, it would cover all of the bases, so to speak, for the emergency plan. So he requested we use the same plan.
And before we move forward, Naeem has a church event tonight that he has to go to, so he's going to go ahead and log off now. We appreciate your time, sir, and have a great rest of your night. And we're going to go back to Bill. I had Mr. Benito here in the meeting for a minute, but then I lost him again. So, Bill, we got your question to Brian, and then we dropped you before you had your opportunity to ask a question of Lieutenant Levy. Can you unmute yourself? And
Yes, can you hear me?
we've got you.
Okay. Yeah. So my question to Lieutenant Levy is that we have people allowed to bring in their own coolers, and probably a lot of young people around there that are underage. Does the sheriff's department feel comfortable with being able to enforce the alcohol consumption in that environment?
When we talked with Mr. Benito and Mr. Post and Travis from the city, how we have it set up, if you think how the parking lot was laid out, we're dividing it up in basically 4 quadrants. So you think about northwest, northeast, southeast, and southwest. We're going to put a couple deputies in each one of those quadrants, or 8 people or 8 deputies roaming that area. If we have any problems, we'll go to that and deal with it. We're looking at it this way. We can't commit to say we'll be at the event until this is approved, because if it's not approved by the city, then we can't commit to it. Our plan that we talked about was saying that we would have enough deputies there that if there is a problem, we'll handle it appropriately and accordingly. We'll have a very strong presence when people come into the event, so they know that we're there. If concerns come up, we'll handle them. We gave Mr. Benito and others our numbers of probably 14 agency members to be there working this event, from traffic control to security inside, and then also some security outside the event when it's over, to help with traffic congestion inside the city at the traffic light. But we feel comfortable that the event, how it's planned and laid out, will be handled appropriately.
Okay. Well, if you feel comfortable with it, then I do too. I just needed to hear that from you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Bill. And I was thinking about, I think, Bill, you made a similar comment at the first meeting. And I've been talking to my students about whether or not we were going to have this. And this is absolutely no offense to Sister Hazel. I think they're a great band, but none of my students know who Sister Hazel is. So,
I was going to say, it's not
going to have a whole lot of young people here.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be about my age group. Folks who are going to be coming to see the band that they grew up with. Other board member questions? Chair Baker?
Mr. Mayor. So I want to not emphasize necessarily, but there are some sections in here where it is definitely not clear who the applicant is. If it's Pat Post and Sister Hazel, or if it's the city, because some of these questions are answered that the city will comply for the application rather than the applicant. And, I don't want to sound like I'm nitpicking, because what we have is all right. But, if we're going to get an operations and emergency plan and Chief Buckner said that it could be the same, then we should get a clean copy for this event. We should have the resolution. We should have the list of conditions that staff has recommended, so we can review those in advance and have an opportunity to look at them with what we have in front of us. It just feels like, I don't know. I understand we want to have an event out there, and this is the 3rd special use permit we've had. We've reviewed a lot of this, but that doesn't mean we should get a halfway done application to look at. And we gave time to give us more information.
I would absolutely agree with that criticism, and we will work internally to make sure that, you know, when we prepare for these nights, we do a little bit better job of editing the work that we do. Who, just for clarity's sake, because I read the Pat Post applicant, and then I didn't scan past that. The applicant here is Sister Hazel. If this board is comfortable with the conditions and moving forward, we're obviously going to correct all of the copy and paste errors before we go in front of the commission. But who would be the applicant that this board is recommending? Is it Pat Post? Is it Sister Hazel? Which one is it?
The ultimate applicant is Pat Post as the owner, but Mr. Benito as the representative of the band is the agent.
Okay.
With an affidavit from Mr. Post. If I had to guess, I think probably what happens, we provided Mr. Benito and of course Pat has a copy of the previous temporary use permit applications. And so I think it was mainly going through those old ones. It just got a couple things got missed where it was for Westfest. And so we just didn't catch all of it and get back with Mr. Benito in time to correct a couple of those.
Okay.
I think that part of what Chair Baker's calling out, though, are answers to the questions on pages 10 and 11, and how the answers are worded. That it's the city answering the questions on how they will comply. Which
right, because that set of information came from Westfest, the Westfest application. I think that's where that probably came from.
Right. I think what the board is expressing, though, Brian, is frustration with having to figure that out. If the city is the applicant, then we know that we're going to do what we say in the application. If we have someone else that's an applicant, we need to be very clear about who's doing what. So again, I know that, this board is giving them another night to come back and hold this special meeting to try to make sure that this can happen on the schedule for the applicant. But we just need the clarity here as we move forward. So, if there's a specific question there, Gavin, on the answers that the city gave that you want to hear Mr. Benito say that he would answer that question in the same way, or he's willing to adhere to the same standard that the city was going to answer that question. Let's get those finer points on the floor now, so that staff can go back and the applicant can go back and change that wording on the application before we move forward, and this board can be clear about what they want.
I think his intent is to follow the outline that the city's given in the application. I just think that, before it goes before the commission, at least the language has to be adjusted, but I would have appreciated if we would have had that same copy, I guess.
Mr. Benito, can you, we have two questions. You fell out on us when one other one came up. Our attorney is requesting that the city is added to your insurance plan. Usually that has a nominal, if any, cost to it. So would you please unmute yourself and tell us if you are willing to add the city, and then could you speak to that emergency plan? Are you willing, you've read through those answers that the city helped you write in that section? Are you willing to adhere to what the same standard that the city of Newberry was going to adhere to when we were holding Westfest there?
Yes, I am. I spoke with Chief Buckner yesterday, and I'm going to speak with him again tomorrow or Friday, and really get the plan more dialed in specifically for this event. But the comprehensive plan is the same. It's he said he wanted to use basically for every event that's going to be held at that mine, and we're working with him to you adhere to those same regulations.
Okay. What about the insurance? Are you okay with adding the city of Newberry?
Yeah, there should be no issue there.
Okay, wonderful. We do appreciate that, and we'll add that into the final motion made, Rich. And Janine, don't let me forget to do that when we get to that point. Are there any more questions from the board members of either staff or the applicant or Lieutenant Levy? Lieutenant, we appreciate you sticking here with us. Seeing no more questions from the board, we're going to move to final arguments. We'll give the applicant, Mr. Benito, you don't need to make a final argument, but if there's anything lastly that we missed in our presentations, now would be the opportunity to cover that ground.
I think everything was covered unless anyone has any other questions for me specifically.
Okay. Brian, do you have any final arguments you'd like to make?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are governed by the substantial and competent evidence standard, and as Mr. Thomas laid out for us in the presentation, we're specifically governed by the Land Development Regulation 14.10 on the temporary use, special temporary use permits. So that standard has to be met with respect to any nuisance issues, traffic issues, parking issues, and of course, the board has the ability to include any reasonable conditions, which staff has already laid out as recommended, with the addition of the clarification on the applicants, or who the applicant is throughout, and the addition of the city on the insurance policy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, board deliberations. Any final thoughts, final comments, ponderings, musings, reflections?
Do we
Here,
need a motion before we deliberate?
no, we would deliberate and then we ask for a motion. So if there are no deliberations, we can entertain a motion and then we will discuss that motion. Anyone can deliberate at all, or make a motion to approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application. But someone.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we send this package forward to the Board of Adjustment with a recommendation for approval under the conditions that the city is named as also insured on the insurance policy, and that the application is cleaned up to be clear as to who the applicant is.
Okay, thank you, Bill. We have a motion on the floor. Rich, did that cover everything that we need to get in there?
It did, but let me clarify, and certainly Member Conrad or perhaps Brian can override me on this, but this matter would actually go right in front of the City Commission.
Correct.
Rather than the Board of Adjustment on this particular matter under 14.10.
So the only thing
Okay.
in that motion would be the Newberry Commission instead of the BOA. You're
That's
good with that, Bill?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a second from Miss Linda. Okay. Now that we have a motion, probably second on the floor, are there any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the board? Hearing none. Brian, would you queue up our telephone number? Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our quasi judicial hearing tonight. It's the only item of business that we have before us tonight. This hearing has been in regards to an application for a special temporary use permit for Sister Hazel concert at the mine on October 23rd, 2020. The motion that has been seconded on the floor is to approve this application with some provisos and conditions. One, that the applicant add the city of Newberry onto their insurance policy, and that we work together to clean up the application process. This item will go in front of the Newberry Commission at our very next meeting, I believe. Is that right, Brian? September 25th, right? At the next commission meeting. If you'd like to call this board and make a comment on this application, now is the appropriate time to do so. All you need to do is dial the phone number on your screen in front of you. Once you're in the meeting, click that hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. That'll let us know that you have a comment, and we'll make sure you have an opportunity to address the board. Brian, do we have anyone with their hand raised?
Mr. Mayor, we do not.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say it's the city commission on the 28th.
28th. Okay, thank you. Brian, I didn't quite hear you. Do we have someone with their hand raised or no?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back for a roll call vote unless any board member has thought of a question about the motion on the floor while we were in public comment. Can you take us back to the gallery view, Brian? Okay. Seeing none. Roll call vote. Gavin?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ms. Linda?
Aye.
Chair Baker?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Benito, we appreciate you being here with us tonight. Lieutenant Levy, thank you, sir, for being here with us tonight. Both of you, wish you safe travels and a wonderful evening. We have no new business in front of us tonight, which will move us to topics for members for discussion. Gavin?
None.
Bill?
None.
Linda?
That me?
Yes, ma'am.
I
Did you-
do have a comment. Am I on?
You're on.
Okay. And driving around town the last few weeks here, I have noticed, and I'm concerned about some landscaping that has been installed, also landscaping that has been removed. The landscaping is in a particular residential area. So I'm wondering what our land development regulations require for landscaping, if we have any. And I would like for us, the P&Z board, to review the city's development landscaping standards and maybe possibly as we move along to recommend some changes. If Brian and the staff could provide us with a copy of our development landscaping standards and make this an agenda discussion item at the November or December meeting, I would really like to know what we have.
I think that's a great idea. And as long as everyone is willing to be flexible on the timeline, we'll move this along as quickly as we can. I think that this might actually be something that we'd want to bring staff back and make a presentation to the P&Z board, and then seeing how it goes. This may be something we want to have a community workshop on. It's been a long time since we've come together as a town to think about those types of things, what we expect, what we like, what we want. So this may be an opportune moment. Thank you, Ms. Linda, for bringing that up. Do I have a head nod from a majority of folks that to go ahead and have staff bring that back to us? All right, I appreciate it.
Just as an aside, Mr. This is
I
not,
have,
Hang on one second. I got two people talking at one time. Hang on one second, Ms. Linda. Brian, did you want to?
I was gonna say, this is an excellent time for that discussion because we're working with University of Florida to revamp our land development regulations. And so the results of that discussion would fit right in nicely with those changes.
Okay. Ms. Linda, did you have another comment?
no, but this is, I guess my only comment is this has become very important to me. And I don't want to have to push anybody, but I really want to make sure that we get on top of this. We have a lot of development going on, and I think it's become urgent. It should, I mean, we should have probably dealt with it years ago, but here we are. And one last thing, I wanted to thank Dallas because he really keeps us moving, and that's important to all of us. So Dallas, you're doing a good job. Thanks.
I think that goes to Brian tonight. He's been the one behind the controls.
And to Brian. Okay. All right.
Did you,
I'm off. I'm done. Thanks, Brian.
Chair Baker, did you have any topics for discussion?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right. And I only have a question for Brian. Do we have our tiny house ordinance on the agenda for the next, on the 28th?
perhaps our principal planner could address that. She's been working on that project.
All right. Wendy, how are we doing? How are we coming? It's going to be ready for the 20. Is that Wendy? Can you hear me?
Yes, your question was what?
All right, how's our tiny house ordinance? We were set a goal for this month. We're going to make it.
This, that is going before, it's going to be circulated amongst staff before it comes to the planning and zoning board. And it'll be going, in other words, informally first for feedback from everyone, and it will go to you as well, but it actually will go before the planning and zoning board once that final review has taken place. So it looks like
October for P and Z.
for P&Z, based on advertising requirements, I would not say that October, unless you just wanted to discuss it without it being an advertised ordinance. It'd be,
Well, let's talk about it offline. I was hoping for a more succinct answer. So I don't want.
you can do it on October if you would like, if we ever, I think the ad had to go in this week.
What's
So you
that?
have to make it November.
Mr. Mayor, why don't we just put it on the agenda as an information item? We won't
Yes.
vote on it, but just give us
Okay.
the background on it.
So we could do a presentation on something like that for the next meeting, and then we could advertise it in time for the next November meeting.
Okay.
Or you could even do a special meeting.
All right. I appreciate it. That was my only member. Any topics from staff? Hearing none. Rich, if you would stay for just a couple minutes after the meeting is over. Brian, if you wouldn't mind not ending the meeting on all of us. Thank you all for holding this special meeting. We appreciate each of you. Travel safe, be safe, and we are adjourned.
Mayor, just remember,
And you just muted yourself, Janine. So whatever you're saying, nobody is hearing. Janine?
oh, I don't know that stopping it, I think we have to actually leave it for it to truly stop recording.